And this morning I saw only one person had taken it, and I think it was me doing the test student thing in there. And I didn't understand why until I got to talking to a couple of you, and now I understand why. It's not worth any points. Okay, it's not worth, I think it has it listed at 60 points. Yeah, it's not, ignore all that stuff. No, your point, yeah, and on the same topic, your Canvas is going to try and tell you what your grade is in the course. Ignore all that stuff. Okay, I haven't set it up to calculate your grade. Ignore all that. Your grade in the course is very simple. Your 2 midterm exams are 100 points. Your final exam is 150 points. There's 350 points in the course. Okay, it's very simple. So that practice exam, there are no points attached to that, so ignore that. And I believe I have it set up so you can take it unlimited times, not that you need to do that, but I think I have it set up so you can take it more than one time on there. So it is practice, it is not a graded exam. And again, I'm pretty sure the answers should be correct on there. Don't get all hung up on the details of, well, you know, what about this, and you didn't say that, and this, and that. The only purpose of that is to give you an idea of what to expect on the exam, on the real exam. That's the only purpose, okay? So number one, when you get on the real exam, which you'll see on the practice, you click on the link to open up the database, and that's the data for the entire exam. Okay, it's not each individual data for each individual question. Okay, you open up you hit one link on the exam, that opens up the database for the entire exam. Okay. Also, you'll see on the practice exam that there are non-Excel questions on there. There are questions on there that have nothing to do with Excel. Okay, because again, like I told you, first day class is a finance class, not an Excel class. Okay, so that's the only intent of the practice exam. Okay, and did that get your question?
Did you talk about the attempts? How many you can take?
Yeah, I believe I had it set up for unlimited. Yeah, Tommy, did that get you?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was just looking on here for the exam with the calculator, but I see where it says there is no calculator.
Right. Okay, so that's the only purpose of the practice exam. Your real exam opens up on Wednesday, so be reminded, the lab had the hours on there wrong. Okay, I just went over and talked to them about it. I have not had a chance to check their website to make sure they corrected, but they had all of the exams opening up at 7 in the morning, which is not correct. Okay, so everybody listen. I just told them about it. They should have fixed it. I haven't had a chance. Even if they do fix it, you know, who the heck knows, something could happen, because when I submitted it, I'm sure I submitted the right times. But it assumed that I wanted to start at 7 in the morning. And when I mentioned that to him, he neither denied nor admitted that. So, okay. So regardless, I'm telling you right now, these are your exam times. Today is the 1st, so we have classes through Wednesday, of course, because of July 4th. The exam will open up on 3rd after class. So in other words, roughly around 3:30. That's the time that I told them at the lab. Okay. The real answer is when we finish class on Wednesday. That's when it'll open up. Okay. So it will open up then. This is a holiday, so I'm sure they're closed. I honestly don't know if the testing lab is open either of these 2 days. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I really don't know. But the exam will be open all day, Monday until 11:59 at night. So we don't have to get confused on our midnights, okay? So you have, it'll open up after class on Wednesday, and it's open all day on Monday until 11:59 at night. Okay, so we won't have class on Monday because one of your opportunities to take the exam is during class time. Okay, if I didn't do that, then it opens up the possibility of, oh, well, I can't make it because I work and this and that, blah, 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 so forth and so on. Well, if I incorporated class time in there, that takes away all that stuff. Okay, so we'll have class through Wednesday. Our next class will be on Tuesday. Okay, so everybody clear on the exam? Yeah. Everybody got it? Okay, so regardless of, and that should be what's on Canvas. I know that's what I have set up on Canvas for the exam times. Regardless of what they put on the testing lab, that's the deal right there. Okay? Questions? Okay, before I forget, this is very important. This is very important. Okay, so listen up. Actually 2 things. When you get over to the exam, you're taking your exam, whatever the case may be, if you have a problem with the exam, some electronic, whatever it is, if you have a problem, let them know, okay? They have my cell phone number, okay? If they say they don't have it, tell them to look on their computer. They do have it, okay? If you have a problem over there, they have my cell phone number. If necessary, they can call me and we can get it corrected right then. If you have a problem and then leave the lab and then come into me on Tuesday and say, hey, I had a problem, it's too late. There's nothing I can do about it. Okay? So if you have a problem over there, they have my cell phone number. Let the lab guy know. I can hop on whatever computer I can get to from wherever I am. I can take care of it on that end. I don't think it was last year. I think it was the year before last. They had a power surge over there. Boom! 3/4 of the way through the exam blows up and disappears. Person leaves. Okay? No. If you call me, that happens, the tech says, yeah, we had a problem up here, blah, blah, blah. Then I can reset it. Okay? Yeah, you're going to have to start over. You're going to be upset about it, but at least you won't be upset with me because it's not my fault. You'd be upset with whoever handles that stuff. But that happened, I think it was 2 years ago. Okay? But if you leave, there's nothing I can do about it. Okay? So, again, make sure you do that. Also, be reminded that right after class on the 3rd, I'm going to shut down Canvas, which means you're not going to be able to access homework solutions, in-class examples, or anything else on there except the exam. So if you want to download any of that stuff for your own study purposes, make sure you do it before this. Okay? Seniors, okay, do it before then, please, because if you email me, I'm giving you plenty of notice. If you email me afterwards and say, hey, oh, I forgot, will you please email me this or that? Depending on where I am and what I'm doing, that may or may not happen, okay? So make sure you get that stuff off of here before then, because I'm not going to open it back up probably till Tuesday morning, okay? If I happen to be awake at 1 o'clock Monday night, I might open it up then, but it's probably not going to be opened back up until Tuesday morning, okay? And then after that, on Tuesday, we'll have probably about a half, so we'll probably leave at 2:45 or 3 o'clock on Tuesday, and that's your opportunity for those of you who want to see your exam. So we'll go up to the testing lab, and Nicole will facilitate seeing the exam. If you know for sure that you want to see your exam, if you know that for sure, email her and let her know, because she's going to get up there early, and if you email ahead of time, then she can go ahead and print it and have it ready for you. So that'll save a lot of time. Because when everybody goes up there to see their exam, if she has to print it on the spot, then she can only go as fast as the printer can print. And you know how that goes. Okay? Especially when you got to reload paper and all the things that go along with a printer. Okay, so again, if you know for sure that you want to see your exam, email her ahead of time, and she'll print it and have it ready for you. Okay. Sorry.
Are you going to tell us how many questions on the exam and how much time?
25 questions on there. And I set it for 90 minutes. I'm glad you mentioned that. I didn't remember before. Yeah, I had it set for 90 minutes. Plenty of time. Plenty of time. Assuming it doesn't take you 10 minutes to calculate the arithmetic average of returns. If it takes you 10 minutes to calculate the arithmetic average of returns, then 90 minutes might not be enough time.
Okay.
But assuming you're somewhat efficient, which again is part of the point of this course, clear. Elaine. It will definitely cover chapters 1, 2, and 4. We'll see how far we get into chapter 5. Okay, so we'll see how far there, but definitely chapters 1, 2, and 4.
So not 3?
And was there another question? Correct. Correct. Because that class period is an opportunity for you to take the exam. Other questions? Okay, so we're all straight on the practice exam. We're all straight on the exam. And I'll be reminding you of the exam all week long. So we're good to go on that. Again, homework solutions, anything like that you want to download off there, make sure you download it before the end of class on Wednesday. Okay. Questions? Once? Twice? Okay. All right, then let's go ahead and continue on. I believe where we were last time was going over homework. So we'll go ahead and finish up the chapter 1 and 2 homework. We'll start chapter 4, ratio analysis, see how far we get into that. I don't know that we'll get through all of that today, but we'll go through that, probably do chapter 4 homework tomorrow. And I've got Wednesday scheduled for catch-up, so we might start some chapter 5 stuff and just kind of see how far we get. Okay? All right, so continuing on with homework, I believe we left off chapter 1, problem 2, right? That's kind of where we ran out of gas, ran out of energy on Thursday. It's you know, it's tough for me too. That's where we are, right? Okay. All right. Let's see. Chapter 2, they give you some information. Ask you to excuse me. Ask you to calculate the net profit margin for each year. Which they have calculated in here. Pretty easy to do. Pretty easy to do. All we're doing, net profit margin is calculated. By the way, this is an intro to chapter 4. This is one of the ratios. When we get there, I'm going to give you a list of ratios that I want you to memorize for the exams. This is one of them. How do we calculate net profit margin? Net income divided by sales. Okay, so that's all we're doing there. Copy that over. And that's pretty simple. Questions? Questions? Okay. And that's, of course, what they have right here. All right, they also ask you to calculate the average annual growth rate using the geomean function. We've talked about this already. They've got that down here, okay, where they did it kind of the long way. Down here at the bottom, I added some, I believe I did this, I added some array functions down here, okay? But calculating the geomean with array, using the array, would be your P1s divided by your P0s minus 1, and then the trick with arrays is to Control, Shift, and Enter. Control, Shift. That's one of those things, you know, there's several things this semester that pop up with Excel that I'm going to show you even though I really can't test you on. Okay? On the exam, the question is, you know, calculate the geometric average return. Okay? Whether you use the geomean function with arrays, whether you use geomean without arrays, whether you do it the long way, do whichever you like. Okay? But the array function is probably the quickest way to do it. Not that the others are incredibly slow, but this is probably the quickest way to do it. Okay. All right, so questions about that? Questions?
And it's Control Shift.
Control Shift and then Enter. Yeah, that's on, I have a video on that. Okay. Other questions? Okay. So we've talked about the geomean function quite a bit already, and they also ask you to calculate the arithmetic average, right? Which you can do several ways, again using the array. Do the same idea, P1s divided by P0s minus 1, Control Shift Enter. So those are your geometric average and your arithmetic average. So a question about the Excel part of that. Okay. What else do you notice about these two? And we talked about this early. It might have evaporated out of your memory at this point. But you got it in your notes, so you're going across it for the exam. What else do you notice?
Walmart is pessimistic with the geometric.
The geometric is pessimistic? Okay. Anybody I'm sorry?
Negative control.
Okay, yeah, the geometric average is negative, whereas the arithmetic average is positive. Anything else? Why is the, well, kind of an inaccurate question, but why is the geo mean negative and the arithmetic average positive? And this is important for a number of reasons, in my opinion, particularly for investors.
Growth and shrink.
Okay.
Because it just adds up the growth and divides it by however many observations there are.
Okay.
Money time in
I'm sorry. One more.
time money in value, it's a present value.
Okay.
It's like
Arithmetic averages are always upwardly biased. Okay, remember we talked about that. The geometric average is a more accurate measure of changes in value. Okay, notice that sales in 2006 were 204,000 or 204 million, whatever this is. Okay, sales in 2010 are less than that. They're 198. But the arithmetic average implies that sales are higher now than they were then. But that's not true. They're actually lower. Okay? And like I say, where this really comes into play, in my opinion, is in performance evaluation of investment returns. Okay? I'm telling you for a fact, right? It is two different conversations. When you're sitting in front of a client who has entrusted you with their hard-earned money for the last 15, 16 years, however long it is they've been saving it, and they've entrusted it to you, and you are in a fiduciary position to do your best for them, it is two different conversations to say, hey, we made money, and hey, we lost money. That's two different conversations. Okay? So arithmetic averages are always upwardly biased. Okay? That's why, and I didn't state it real well, but that's why this is higher than that. Okay, and again, be reminded that geometric average is one way of solving that. What we use in academics is the log. Okay? Remember me telling you that? The log change in prices. Okay. All right, questions? Questions? Okay. So a couple of points there. The arithmetic average, but also an example of there are questions on the exam that are not Excel related, because this is a finance class. Okay. All right, questions? Questions? Okay. That was on just a second ago. I guess the phone burned out. Oh well. I'm operating in the dark up here. Okay, so that was the geomean, the average, and then they had you create a column chart. I already told you that on the exam, what I'm going to focus on are scatter diagrams. If you wanted to do the column chart, here you go right here. So you're in your insert column, right-click, select data, and then you go through all of the steps. Okay. But like I say, I've already told you that on the exam, what I'm going to focus on are the scatter diagrams, which we've talked about. Okay. All right. So we're okay on that. I mean, if you really get wound up about column charts and you really like that, I'll be happy to stay after class. We can talk about it for a few minutes if you like, but that's not going to be on the exam. Good enough?
Yep.
All right. Okay. That is chapter 1. What do we? Oh, in chapter 2 we had all the financial statements, which I don't think we really need to go through all of the details on this, because we did that. We went through a lot of detail looking at McDonald's real financial statements and then doing the in-class examples. All right, so we've gone through quite a bit of detail on this as it is. So let's see, what are they asking you to do here? Recreate income balance sheet, create a statement of cash flow. That's probably the, I would hope that by now you'd be able to put together the income statements and balance sheets. without much problem. Let me make sure there are no accounts on here. We didn't talk about lease expenses. Well, actually, we did a little bit. We got on a tangent about capital and operating leases. They specify lease expense on here. Where would that go on the income statement? What would that be considered? Generally. And we will be general on the exam, even though I'm going to talk about a little bit more detail here. But generally, where would lease expenses go on the income statement? So you're a CFO, you're entering into a new lease, okay? You're trying to think of how that's going to affect various parts of your earnings, the various components of your earnings. Generally, where would lease expenses go?
Interest expense?
And where?
Interest.
Not interest.
Operating expense.
It's the capital lease, we might start getting into that.
That's what I
So
was-
generally, would be operating expense, which is where they have it listed here. But, I mean, you could be partially correct depending on the exact lease. If it's going to be a capital lease, then recall you got to impute interest and all that stuff. And I mean, I'd have to go back and look at that myself. So there may be some of this that might be in interest. But what I was thinking of before we get to that level of detail is it depends on the asset that you're leasing. If it's a, I don't know, a copy machine or something, then yeah, it's probably going to go under operating expenses. But if you're leasing a piece of manufacturing equipment, where would that go?
Property plant.
Go, no, well, yeah, I mean, I'm trying not to get into operating, assuming it's an operating lease, where would it go? Leasing a piece of manufacturing equipment. Now, we're the accounting majors. You guys were all over me last week. So, go up here and cost of goods sold.
Oh, yeah, because of the.
Yeah.
That's-
Okay. So, you know, for exam purposes, I'm not going to get that frisky with you. But as graduating finance majors, understand that if you're leasing a piece of equipment and you're trying to mentally get an idea of, well, how's that going to affect gross profit? How's that going to affect operating income? How's that going to affect earnings per share? Okay? Well, it depends on the piece of equipment that you're leasing. Really, we could have the same conversation about depreciation. Because what we've been, you know, as finance majors, presumably what you've been doing for the last 2 years, as I do in my classes, is we just assume that depreciation is an operating expense right down here, right? Well, that's not necessarily true. Again, it depends on what you're depreciating. If you're depreciating a piece of manufacturing equipment, then that's going to lower your gross profit because it's going to be part of your cost of goods sold. Okay?
So for exam purposes, is that?
Yeah, no, again, I'm not going to turn it into a major accounting class with you. So, no, this will suffice for exam purposes. But more importantly than that, as graduating finance seniors who, number one, are analyzing financial statements, but number two, are making financial decisions that are going to affect financial statements, I mean, you should have at least a working feel for how this stuff is going to affect the various parts of the financial statements. Okay, and that's why I'm pointing this out. Okay. Other questions? Other questions? We were talking about capital leases. There was something, I thought of something over the weekend that I wanted to mention to you guys. I can't think of what it was. We're talking about operating, capital, and you know, that's where you'd have to impute interest, so that actually probably would affect interest expense, like you were saying, partially. So that might be divided up. Questions? Okay. All right, so let's see, are there any accounts on here that we haven't really talked about? Market accounts receivable. We talked about accrued expenses. We talked about the equity section. What is the difference between this $100,000 in common stock and the $691 in additional paid-in capital? What's the story with those two accounts? Does that represent a $100,000 sale of stock and then someone donated $691,000 to the business? Is that what that means?
No.
No? Yeah.
It means when it's sold for more than par value,
Yeah.
it's the excess.
Yeah. So the additional paid-in capital account holds the amount in excess of the par value. Okay. So exam question, in total, how much was this company's stock sold for? As of the end of that year? $791,000. Understanding that it might have been various sales for various prices, but in total, that's the total price. Okay? All right, everybody on top of that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And like I say, probably the major reminder that needs to happen here is the statement of cash flow. Okay, so make sure that you can assemble a basic statement of cash flow like we did on Friday. I mean, we can go through this if you want to right now. We can assemble it right now if you want to. Any potential problems here? Anything you don't like? Like I said, I mean, we can start from scratch and go through it all if you like.
Sure.
You want?
Sure.
You want to? Okay. All right. Okay. So statement of cash flow. All right, so here are our balance sheet items. How is the statement of cash flow generally organized? Operating, investing,
Financing.
and financing. Okay, I can abbreviate for the sake of time, is that okay? Good, because again, yes ma'am?
I'm sorry, I know you explained this last time, but how do you get the two views again?
It's under view, new window, and then arrange all.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions? Other questions? And don't apologize for that. I need questions. I like questions.
How do you do it in Mac?
It's the same way. Because I think that actually came up for it, didn't it? It should be the same way.
It's not on mine, your view is
I'd have to look at, and I'm a Mac guy, so I'm with you. I'd have to look at it.
Yeah, this is a newer version of Excel and stuff, so it might change a little bit.
Yeah, I'd have to look at it. It's under look under window. Look under window.
Arrange.
Is that where it is?
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Other questions? Okay. Under the statement of cash flow, what's the point of the statement of cash flow?
Show the changes in cash.
Yeah, our cash went up by, what is that, $11,000? Okay. So our statement of cash flow is showing that change. Right? So this is reconciling that change, so it needs to balance to the dollar. Really to the penny, but to the dollar. Okay? So on the exam, when you're doing this, like I've said before, you know, when you're putting together the balance sheet, income statement, statement of cash flows, you'll probably take, 10 minutes or so putting all that together, and obviously make sure it balances. The vacuum cleaner of time is going to be if it doesn't balance. And then you got to go back and try and figure out why. That's going to be the vacuum cleaner of your time. The way you avoid that is two ways. One, practice at home. Okay, so do these problems over and over to build it into your muscle memory. But also, one of your best practices at the end of chapter 1 is to be organized with your spreadsheets. Okay, so try and be as organized as possible. All right. I think I did it one way. The other way, I'm going to show you another little trick you can do here. Okay, so where do we start with this?
Net income.
Net income, always. I don't use that word very often. Okay. We start with net income. So that is on our income statement. All right. A little time saver here, if you want to format the entire worksheet rather than just that cell, click in the upper left right here. Notice it selects the entire worksheet. Okay, little time saver there. All right, so that's our income statement. What's next?
Depreciation.
Okay, we're going to adjust out our non-cash items. Of course, we're going to have depreciation. So that would be here. So everybody understand that? Do we have any other non-cash on here? Any others? I think we're okay, although in the real world, if this were a capital lease, we might have some issues in here. I'm not going to do that to you on the exam, but in the real world, we might have some issues there, but I think we're okay there. What's next? Okay, more generally, what else is going to go in the operating section?
Account receivable,
Okay, more generally.
The changes in.
The changes in
account receivable.
Current assets.
current assets and current liabilities. Okay, so it's going to be the changes in our current assets and current liabilities. Are we going to put marketable securities under operating? Does that belong under operating? I don't want to word it as do we put it there, because you guys really aren't going to be accountants doing it. You will be finance analysts analyzing it. So does it belong under operating?
Investing.
Why investing?
It's not part of ordinary operations.
Yeah, the solutions to the homework have it under the operating section. Okay? I take issue with that because it's not an operating activity. It's something outside of your ordinary course of business, unless, of course, it's a trading firm. Now, if you're working for a hedge fund or something, then it would be under operations. Of course, then it would be up in net income. Okay? But I argue that this actually shouldn't be under operating. It should be under investing activities. Okay? But now, this gets a little tricky because I was actually looking at some real-world financial statements this morning as I was refreshing my memory on this. If you think about it, the gain or loss on these are going to be included in net income. So what you're going to see in the real world is marketable securities listed here because it's adjusting out of net income, and then you're also going to see them listed here to put it into the investing section. Okay. Again, I'm not going to get that detailed with you on the exam. So on the exam, we'll just go ahead and throw them into investing and move on with life. All right? But again, in the real world, that's what you are likely to see. Okay? Keeping in mind that the changes in these might result in a gain or loss, which is going to determine which sign you have as it's adjusted out of net income. So if it's in net income as a loss, then the sign you would see here would be a positive or negative. Yeah, if it's reflected as a loss in net income, to adjust that out, you would see it positive here and then negative here. If it was a gain, okay, financial statement analysis. Okay, so again, I'm not going to bust your chops about that on the exam. Okay, we'll throw that in investing and move on, but that's what you would actually expect to see. Okay, so marketable securities have gone really far down. So what does that do to our cash? Up or down?
Please.
Yeah. Okay. And again, I always have to think about this too. May all the assets all go in the same direction. The liabilities and equity go in the opposite direction. So if you don't remember, just think of the obvious one, inventory. If your inventory goes up, generally, what's that going to do to cash? It's going to go down because you went out and bought inventory, so obviously your cash went down, all other things being equal. Okay? So once you have the direction going, then you can just copy it. All right? So this is, what we just said, this is going to increase cash, right? Is that right? Yeah, okay. All right. So once we've got this, do we put accounts receivable in there, in the operating? Yeah. Do we put inventory in the operating?
No.
Yeah. And does that take care of the assets? Yeah. Now, a little trick that you can do as you account for each account, you can put a little tick mark by it, so you know that you've taken care of that one. And that way you don't double count it. All right, and our liabilities are going to be the opposite. So we talked about that. So, is that what I want to do? All right, so B minus C, C minus D. Yeah. So, I'm sorry, I got the wrong section on it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody with me? Okay. Accrued expenses go in there. Anything else from the right-hand side of the balance sheet? Okay, so does that take care of operations? Yep. Okay. So, exam, test, taking technique, notice, I'm not filling in all the details, the underlines and all that kind of stuff, but it is organized. Okay. All right, investing is going to consist of
The changes in your long-term.
long-term assets. Okay. So, of course, gross fixed assets will be in there, assuming I put them in the right place. Okay. What about accumulated depreciation? We put that in there? Why not? No, not because it's not a non-cash. It is a non-cash item, but that's not why we don't include it. Trying not to use a double negative, but I don't think I can do it. Why don't we put it in there?
Depreciation back in their operating.
Yeah.
And their accumulated accounts.
It's already accounted for right here.
Plus your accumulated accounts for more than 1 year, you're trying to get this year's best.
Correct. Correct. And without getting into all the purchases and sales, that would be the difference. So it's already accounted for there. Anything else in investing? Well, I'm going to leave the marketable securities up there just because that's where the solutions have it. Again, we would actually put them in the investing. So we'll make that adjustment at the end. Okay, financing consists of
Changes in long-term debt.
long-term debt, which is so if debt goes up, then cash goes up. Common stock. See the little trick I did there to save a little bit of time?
How did you get it to skip a line?
I just,
Because they didn't skip a line?
yeah, long-term debt is on line 20 over there on the left. See that?
Yeah.
Absolute reference, if I copy this formula down 2 lines, then it will insert what's on line 22 over there.
Oh.
And then I'm just cutting and pasting it back up here. That way I don't have to do all this stuff I've been doing for the last 10 minutes. So far, so good? Okay. Additional paid-in capital. And what about retained earnings? Include that in there? No, that's your net income. That is your net income. So there is our statement. Hopefully we're correct. Let's just do it the right way. So that means our change, our total change in cash is 11,000. And if you want to take a shortcut, we know that's correct. Because that cash went up 11,000. That's what we got reconciled. We're good to go. And that should be 2241. That's what they have in the solution. Notice, again, I didn't take the time to put in all those lines, but it is organized. So when you do this on the exam and in real life for that matter, and it doesn't balance the first time, then it's relatively easy to go back and see what happened. If you have stuff all over the place, that's the vacuum cleaner of time right there. That was the first thing I learned. So I started my career in public accounting. That was the very first thing that I learned. Is, you know, I graduated school, I was ready to sit for the CPA exam, I knew how to audit, I knew how to account for things correctly, but when you go out to a real life client and they've screwed it up and you've got to untangle it, that's what was hard. I knew what they should have done, but trying to figure out what they did and then fix it was the hard part. And there we go.
Does that happen the majority of the time or no?
I mean, pardon?
Did that happen the majority of the time or no?
Yeah, well, there's always, yeah, I mean, if they do everything 100% correct, then in a way they don't really need you.
No, but I'm assuming that they didn't do.
I mean, most of the things they accounted for correctly, yeah. But, you know, it used to tick me off when I was, in tax practice, how, you know, I'd have a friend call me April 1st. You know, taxes are due April 15th. Well, I'm preparing my tax return, and I have everything pretty much in there. There's just these 2 things I don't understand. Well, those 2 things that you don't understand are why I get paid. That's why I get paid, okay? Everybody can look at a W-2, and the software says put it in box 5, and you put it in box 5. Everybody can do that. Okay? But when you start getting into the investments and the depreciation, and that's usually what it was. Oh, used to hear taping. Okay? Yeah, those 2 little things are why I get paid. You know, so you have a moral dilemma.
Free advice?
That's exactly what I want. Whether or not you give it to them, I leave up to you. Other questions? Other questions? Okay, so 2 points here. At your request, you wanted to go through this, which is fine. 2 points here. Number 1, reminder of throwing this thing together. Again, the important part of this is relationships. And number 2, a few little Excel time-saving tricks in there. I didn't take the time to format everything. I just formatted it all uniformly, hitting that. And it's laid out in a nice, organized fashion, even though I don't have colors and lines and all that kind of stuff in there. Okay? All right. We're good to go? Okay. What else? We've got they asked you to put together the common size, which is, excuse me, very easy to do because on the balance sheet, the common size are just percentages of total assets. Okay? So this divided by total assets We'll do our F4, which puts a dollar sign in front of both of them. But remember, in this case, we don't want it in front of the column. So as I believe it was Olga pointed out, you can hit F4 again. Or you can just manually put in the dollar signs, it doesn't matter. Change our format. There you go. That took what, 45 seconds? And that was explaining it at the same time? There you go. Exam question on common size balance sheet. How about your accounts receivable for 2011? Answer, 14%. If I have more decimal points on there, then go out until however many I have on there. And there's your balance sheet. So they have 2 decimal points there. Income statement, same idea, except your percentages are percentage of sales. Being reminded it's actually a percentage of net sales. So in the real world, you would see sales minus returns and allowances as net sales. So your sales would actually be like 102% or something like that. Being reminded also that the 100% is important because that's what all these others are a percentage of. Okay?
I have a question for
yeah.
tip purpose. You mentioned that you may give us, let's just say, sales change. Now, what's the common size for ... Do you recommend that we create another worksheet with that same information so we can make changes and not jack up what we did, or?
You mean for answering common size questions?
Or any of them, when you start changing values, do you recommend that we create another worksheet at the bottom so that we're not messing up our numbers, or?
I would say, of course, use formulas whenever possible, which is one of your best practices. And you got to find the balance between which one is efficient and which one is a readable spreadsheet. So, and that just comes with practice. That's the best way that I know to answer that, because if you start getting too many things, particularly like when we were doing the statement of cash flow over here. Let's see, where did I put that? Right there. Okay. When we started doing the statement of cash flow, if I had copied and pasted all of the balance sheet items, okay, well now I have them on 2 different sheets. You know, I have the same items here and I have the same items over here, and that's when it gets easy, to start getting confused. So the best I can tell you without seeing an example, a specific example, is you got to find that balance between efficiency and a readable, a well laid out spreadsheet. Other questions? Other questions? Okay. Noticing also that with your common size income statement, this also has 3 of the ratios from chapter 4 that I'm going to want you to memorize, which is gross margin, operating profit margin, and total profit margin. This calculation right there is the same thing we just did on the homework problem a few minutes ago. It's the exact same calculation.
What was the second one?
Operating profit margin. I'm going to give you a clean list in a couple minutes, but operating profit margin. Okay. And they're all right there. The value of common size financials is?
Compare unrelated or different capital companies and so. Different
For
companies,
comparison.
Yeah, comparison.
Yeah, somebody help me out.
Size.
Exactly. Okay. The real value is comparing different size, companies of different sizes. Okay. These guys have a gross margin. Their gross margin has gone up from 33 to 35%. Is that good?
Yeah.
Generally, yes. What type of analysis is that? Exam review. We talked about this already. Comparing 33% to 35% is an example of Yeah, time series or a trend analysis. That would be a trend analysis right there. Okay? We compare this 35 to their competitor for the sake of conversation. Let's say their competitor's gross margin is 40%. Is that good or bad? Is this company good or bad relative to their competitor? Bad, they're less efficient. That comparison would be called an
Cross-section.
cross-section. It's funny, you guys are memorizing the academic terms. Cross-section or industry analysis. Cross-section or industry analysis. Okay? All right, and then they ask you to change the sales and all that kind of stuff. But this is, and compare the common size and so forth. So this is the upshot. Again, we didn't go through all the income statement and balance sheet because we spent a lot of time doing that on Wednesday or Thursday, I believe it was. So questions about any of the homework? Questions about what to expect on the exam from what we've done so far? Okay. All right, then let's move into chapter 4, which we've actually already started doing. And